What's up, you guys? Sarah Ripple here with Ripple Effect Fitness. Today, I wanted to just share a relatively simple mistake that a lot of people make when doing exercises such as kettlebell swings, ultimate sandbag power cleans with a barbell, things of that nature. So, we're talking exercises that are along the lines of more of the explosive Olympic type movements, okay? So, with that said, of big importance with these type of movements is that you want to be using hips and legs in order to generate force. And so you're producing force, mitigating it, absorbing it, all that good stuff. So I guess to back it up is important to say that prior to doing exercises such as this, it's important to know how to do more strength-based, grinding type movements, such as deadlifts of all sorts, uh, things like that, prior to making things more explosive with that hip hinge pattern. So client that I had this morning was we were working on a combo. We were doing an ultimate sandbag power clean to a good morning, and I had her set up in sprinter stance. So just to show y'all what I'm talking about. So that little combo right there. When I teach how to do a power clean, I tend to go with the bilateral stance prior to moving to sprinter stance, just because that's the nature that the progression works. Same thing, good morning. I really like to teach the good morning because we can create load on the body without adding a lot of load, because the weight's placed up here, not like a traditional deadlift where it's down here. So it's just essentially a deadlift with the weight placed higher, okay? So one little thing that my client was doing this morning was she was being more task oriented with the power clean, and that she was more focused on trying to pull with her arms and get the sandbag up to this front load position. So in doing that, she wasn't fully using her legs and her hips. So just to kind of mimic what it looked like when she was doing this, was she was kind of going here first and then going here, rather than making it all one fluid motion. Okay, so we worked on it a little bit. Good mornings look good. And so then my little gears are turning and whatnot. And so what I ended up having her do was we did a high pull, then we did a power clean, then we did the good morning. So the neat thing about the high pull is that it's essentially a power clean with a sandbag before we rack it. Okay, so in the sprinter stance, what that looks like is essentially, okay, so the neat thing about that is you are going to have a moment of weightlessness with the sandbag at the top of the movement. So chest height, where the elbows are up. And key point there is that bag is going to be weightless when the hips are fully extended. So for somebody that's not really using their hips, that's going to force them to kind of get a better feel for the timing of those two actions. So the weightlessness of the bag being at chest level, and then the hips being an extension. So that's my whole point of this video. So for her, it really clicked because that was able to teach her to drive the hips. And I don't want to say drive the hips forward, because we don't want to go here. We want to think coming up from the floor by pushing down into the ground, but we're extending the hips. So if someone's doing a power clean and kind of catching it here and then standing up, you're completely leaving a lot on the table as far as like force production and using these big muscles of the hips and glutes. So the point that I got her to understand was that when that bag comes up, that's when the hips kind of lock out at the same time. So there's those two things are happening at the same time. The lockout of the hips, and then the bag being up here, and then to finish the power, like high pull power clean. A power clean again is just a finishing out of that high pull and whipping the elbows underneath it. So for those of y'all that don't have ultimate sandbags, first off, order some. I can help you out if you want to DM me. I can put you in touch with the awesome people over there at Ultimate Sandbag and DVRT. I can also suggest which sizes for you to get. I have all of them almost in here. So, but if you don't have one, get one. If you got kettlebells, we're going to look at doing a kettlebell swing. So when a person has a hard time, and so here's the thing too, in my experience of working with people, people tend to be more quad dominant. They don't want to use their ass essentially. It's almost foreign to get people to do this motion right here, which we traditionally will start with doing a hip bridge on the floor and working just on that, isolating that hip extension pattern. So that's of importance in the whole spectrum of progression, is to start ground based, working on that motion right there before we get you on 2 feet, trying to do something explosive like this. If you're jumping light years ahead trying to do a kettlebell swing without having mastered a bridge on the floor, a hip hinge and standing, good mornings, things like that, then you need to kind of maybe regress it a little bit and work on those more basic exercises. And when I say basic, that doesn't mean that we dismiss them or anything like that. It's oftentimes that the more explosive, like fancier, sexier looking stuff is what people want to do, and they tend to disregard the validity of the fundamental stuff that makes those exercises possible. So if we're talking kettlebell swings, typical mistake that people will make is that they let the weight dangle, or they're too they're convinced that it's an action of lifting the weight with the arms versus generating the force with the hips. So I'm going to try to replicate that. So it'll just kind of be like a dangling bell. It's hard to do. Um, and the weight will kind of pull you around versus locking everything in. Another mistake, which again comes from the timing. So that would be a timing mistake, drawing back to the whole point of this video. Another way that that would be evident would be going here and really trying to raise the arms up. Yes, we could go overhead with a swing, but just trying to like push the hips forward and then end up in like a curve position, which is a no-no because we're putting all the stress back here. So if we're talking the timing, kind of hitting that hip extension at the same time that bell comes up, just like with the power clean, it's going to be relatively chest height-ish. And you should feel like if it could make a sound, it would like lock together, okay? Same thing for like people with Olympic lifting wearing lifting shoes. Like you should hear the feet contact the floor at the same time everything kind of happens together. So those kind of cues are important for y'all out there who work out. I know I have trainers that watch me as well. So for your clients, yourselves, so just to have that kind of feedback from your external environment, so the sounds, but also too visualizing it, uh, and just feeling it all happen together. So be present, like I always say. So if everything's happening together, then we get a nice little locked in. The bell hits that apex of the swing as I lock out my hips. So all of that in a roundabout way to emphasize, hopefully to y'all, that in looking at somebody from the side and doing a swing or any type of explosive hip extension based movement, jumps even too. The arms will naturally come up when you do a jump, but there's a a synchronicity, so to speak, of that hip extension with if we're talking weight, the weight's going to hit that high or the height of its lift or swing or whatever as the hips fully extend. And if you're not using that full capacity of hip extension, then it's going to be a lot more upper body base than we want. You should feel like that weight is weightless and you're essentially throwing it by using your hips. Okay. If you're having a problem with these types of movements and you're feeling it too much in the traps, yes, we're using that stuff, but you feel like you're having to overly rely on the arms. If you have a client, it looks like they're trying to pull too much or trying to muscle it up. The weight might be too light, actually, so that's another thing. But look at how the timing of their hip extension. Check the hip extension in general. If that hip extension is not fully happening, then these exercises aren't going to work right. That's my point. So we'll catch y'all next time.